Hello and welcome to Dead Witch Diaries. We started a new session, a new series, and this series is about trees, the
Free.
lovely trees. I know. So let's just get it started. Raven, take it away.
Okay, so first, let me share this. So I want to talk about why. So this is my little tree opening slide. Beautiful. Love it.
See it. Oh, there you go. Yay, there
There
it
we go.
is. Yay, that is
Yay.
amazing.
Okay, so my tree is hemlock. And I want to say I was very undecided about what tree I wanted to do because I wanted to do one that was native to Oregon. And I couldn't figure out what to do. And so then I started reading this book, They Fear Not the Men in the Woods, which um is good. I finished it last night. The book is good. The story is fantastic. Okay. It's like whimsical horror. So it's like scary stuff that happens in the woods. And so the writing though kind of annoying. The POV is from like this girl who's in her early 20s and she talks like a high schooler, like an immature kind of like way. Like she says a lot of like I told you and stuff like that, which is very like immature in my mind. So the writing is like it's okay, but the story fantastic. And so there's a lot of hemlock trees in the story. Pretty meaningful. So hence hemlock. Okay. So we are going to start off by saying that the hemlock tree is not the same as the hemlock plant. The hemlock plant is from the genus Conium, and so very, very different. We'll talk about the mix up later. Okay,
I
so
was mixed
first,
up. So when before you told me, I was mixed up. Like
ah,
I had mix up. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I didn't even look up. Is hemlock a tree?
oh, you're like,
Is she mixed up or am I mixed up? Somebody's mixed up. So
yes,
God,
lots of
it was
mix
me.
up. So I couldn't really find a botanical picture other than this one, which technically I guess is botanical, but there's a lot of different hemlocks. These are the main ones. Eastern and Western are the ones that we're going to be focusing on throughout the duration of like this presentation, but there's also mountain, Carolina, Taiwan, Northern Japanese, Himalayan, forest, and Yuliungo? I don't know, something like that.
Lungo, Lungdo.
Yeah. Ongado. The GD really throws me off there. Uh, so we're going to focus on that, but we're going to talk a little bit about a couple other ones. We'll talk about Carolina a little bit and Mountain a little bit. Now, I want to talk about the cones because the cones are one way to identify it. These are a lot. Also, it took me a very, very long time to find a picture of like comparing even just like two, like the Western versus the Eastern hemlock. I finally found this in like a scientific article about hemlock trees. So here's a lot of them. Mountain hemlock one, very like interesting looking shape. We have the Western hemlock, the forest, the Eastern, Southern Japanese, Chinese, Northern Japanese, Carolina, and the Himalayan. Now, a lot of these look pretty similar, but the mountain hemlock is definitely different. And then the Eastern hemlock, we'll compare these two because those are the two we're going to talk about, but those look pretty different too. So the saying is that if you are seeing a hemlock cone and you don't know which it is, again, based on Eastern and Western, because those are the most popular or the most common, if it's under an inch and the scales, I guess you call them, are like tidy, then it's an Eastern, which is this one. And if it's over, oh wait, I might have. No, sorry, this one. So under 1 inch is Eastern. I think I might have mixed those up because this says that D is Eastern and this one is Western. Yeah, I mixed those up.
We just like plants. We're not botanists.
Yeah, we
Like, so
don't know.
anyway, figure it out. Like, if you're
Yeah.
that interested in it, you need to like go and do some research. It's
Yeah, I
You're
don't
gonna
know.
look at
You can
those
like
two
Google it.
regardless. So there you
Yeah, but
go.
those are definitely the Eastern and the Western.
Okay.
So anyways, you can tell the difference between if it's an Eastern or Western based on the cone, but you'll
Okay.
have to figure out yourself which cone goes to which tree. So then we also have for identification between the Eastern and the Western. So if you look under the on like the bottom side of the needles, all hemlocks have these two blue lines. It's kind of like a blue silver, but they call it a blue line. So on the bottom, if it has these two blue lines, you know it's a hemlock. You just don't know which one, which species. And then to distinguish the Eastern from the Eastern needles are much like shorter. So you can see it kind of here. They're also more rounded versus the Western needles are a little bit sharper, kind of, and like longer. And also with Eastern, the needles are much more uniform, and the Western is a little chaotic. They're a little like feathery, coming out on like all different sides and stuff. So that's a big identifier. And also, they're called needles, but they're not true needles like other
Yeah.
like conifer trees. They're leaves. They're just tiny leaves. But I think because they're so short, they were just named needles. Another identifier, if you peel some of the bark off, and you don't want to go deep, you want to go very surface level where it's already kind of like distancing from the tree a little bit. If you just peel that off and look underneath, there's purple inner bark like running through, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So lots of ways to identify your hemlock. So the family is the Pinaceae family, which is just the pine family. And the genus is the Tsuga, and you don't really pronounce the T as like we see in a lot of Japanese words. So it's Japanese Tsuka, meaning twig or leaf, and then we'll kind of circle back to that later. But Tsuga is the genus. That's like the whole hemlock family, isn't, or like the whole hemlock grouping. And then with species, there's about 10 to 14 species, which I listed those previously, but only about four are native to North America. The rest are usually over in Asia. So I couldn't find other names for the tree, really, just like you, but I did find like the indigenous names for them. So we have Onita, which is Oroquian. Does that sounds awful.
Iroquois.
That's right,
Iroquois.
Iroquoian, yeah.
Yeah.
So Iroquois, I was like Iroquoian,
Iroquoian.
Iroquoian term for the upper New York and like Ontario region, meaning land of the hemlocks, which I thought was pretty cool. There must be a lot of hemlocks up there. And then Honadia, which is another term specifically for like the tree. So I don't know the difference between these two. I looked them up and couldn't really find there might just be two names for the tree, or if it's one singular tree for this one and then like a group of them is this one, I'm not totally sure. And then Nonu is Cherokee for Eastern Hemlock, and then Tsuga. So we talked about how it means like the literal translation is like leaves, but together the name translates to like mother tree or tree mother, which is pretty cool. I'm missing a quotes there, but that's so these are the four big ones here in the northern US. So we have the Eastern Hemlock, which is native to Eastern North America, hence Eastern Hemlock. And it kind of runs from Canada to the Appalachian region. And then we have Carolina Hemlock, which is in the southern Appalachian Mountains. Mountain hemlock, which is like high elevation along the Pacific coast from like Alaska all the way down through like Oregon and then even into the Sierra Nevadas, which was like Northern California. And then Western hemlock is this is like the Pacific Northwest. So this is my baby. So from Alaska all the way down through like Washington, Oregon, and then Northern California again. So we hear from essentially like Washington, some of the BC down to Southern California, we get these two. But most we get more Western hemlock, some mountain, but Western is more popular for growing here. So the lifespan is also pretty good for a tree. Eastern hemlock lives to be sometimes over 800 years. The average is like 500 years, but in perfect conditions, it can be about 800 years. And then the Western hemlock lives to be about 1200 years. Again, that's not the usual. It's still older. It's like 900. But the oldest one we have found is 1200 years. Now, sizing, they're pretty big. They're not like absolutely massive, I guess, but they're pretty big. Reach heights of 200 to 260 feet, and then with eastern hemlocks, about 60 to 100 feet. And the parts used are the needles and the cambium, which is the inner bark. Okay, so historically and generally, it's used, Eastern hemlock is used for tannin, which you can see here. And then this picture makes me sad. So I put sad baby here.
Oh, that
I know.
baby.
Tannin is like the sap, right? Which we've talked about before, but the sap is like the tree's natural band-aid, essentially. And so this is all like the tree being hurt, essentially, but that's the sap. So it's used for tanning leather, and oops, sorry. The video of where we are is so, there we go. Wood is used for pulp, for paper, for timber, so like for building things. And then Western hemlock is used for like the softwood. It's timbered today. And like traditionally old school, some like extracts and stuff were used, but we'll talk about that later. And then Western hemlock has historically been used to collect fish eggs in Alaska because it's like a really rough surface and it adds a taste to the fish eggs, I guess. So let's talk about some like history and lore. So with Western hemlock, we have a lot of the Northwest Indigenous people who use the tree or worked with the tree as like protection and shelter. So hemlock groves were just kind of often associated with safety because we'll talk about this. I don't think I say it here, but I say it somewhere else. The hemlock groves are really like quiet. They are really good about blocking out sound. Woods in general is good for that, are good for that, but hemlocks especially. And so it was considered like a place of safety and like calmness. Um, the what else? Oh, the woods used for like bedding, ritual spaces. And they kind of a lot of these indigenous people looked at the hemlock tree as a tree that intervenes. So it's not really used for like food, but it's used for times of like imbalance, again, for like safety or for shelter, things like that. So fishing in abundance, branches used to collect eggs, as I mentioned earlier. And then, so the collection of the eggs ties it sometimes to like fertility, seasonal return, the coming back of the fish, things like that.
Nice.
And then with Eastern hemlock, we have, oh wait, yeah, so then we have, the hemlock tree was seen as like a cold weather ally. So they would make infusions from needles during winter for illness, which we'll also talk about in the medicinal part. And it's just generally associated with like survival, especially through harsh weather. So stillness and patience. Oh yeah, here we go. Eastern hemlock forests are notably quiet and shaded. So the eastern more so than the western, but they're both very like quiet and shaded areas. The eastern hemlocks are just like fuller. So some traditions associated the tree with like contemplation and restraint and again calmness. Not seen as a fire tree. So a lot of trees in indigenous culture are associated with like flame or transformation or like fire, but the hemlock is not one of those many trees. Instead, it's seen as like endurance, which is still a little fiery. I mean, I could see that association, but not like blazing.
Yes.
So Europe does not have any indigenous hemlock species, but they did have water hemlock. So water hemlock or poison hemlock, which is the conium that we talked about on like slide one, That was named before the hemlock trees. So in at least for like settlers. So they came to the US already knowing of poison hemlock. And then they came here, and when the tree is crushed, it smells very similar to poison hemlock. And so they just called it hemlock, even though it looks nothing. If you've ever seen poison hemlock, it's like cute. It's like a little white flowery like umbrella, but
Yeah,
it looks nothing like the tree. But because it smells the same, they called it that. So it caused a lot of problems. Okay, so
yeah.
we a lot of people are aware of poison hemlock, but do not know that there are tree species also called a hemlock. And so when doing research on this, I found some information on the hemlock tree, but a lot of even if you type in hemlock tree or even if you type in the genus, it still gives you poison hemlock associations, which is um like death and like sickly and all kinds of like really like baneful associations. But the tree is not that. And so a lot of times if you look up in for like witchy information on the hemlock, you'll get like really baneful associations, and it's not. It's really not. So
Okay.
big problem. Okay, so I have a story for you.
Okay.
So this is an indigenous story, and I can't remember exactly where, but I believe it's the Western tribe. So in the
Uh-huh.
beginning, there was no light in the world. The skies were dark, the waters were in darkness, everything was dark. And Raven was sad for the humans, and so decided to go in search of light for them. So he flew and he flew and he flew days and weeks and months, and he finally saw some light from far away. So he flew towards it. As he got closer and closer, he saw that there was a light at the end of the water, or the edge of the water. So he kept flying, and eventually he lands on a tree and is observing. So he realizes that the sky is coming from the home of, or the light is coming from the home of the sky chief. So Raven watches and watches, and he saw a girl come from the house and go to the water. And Raven realized it was the Sky Chief's daughter. So she had a woven basket with her, and she scoops up some water in the basket and drinks from the basket. So Raven, I'm seeing a lot of typos here, but that's okay. So
There.
Raven changed himself into a hemlock needle and floated
Oh,
down into the water. So when the girl scoops up the water and drank from it, she captured the hemlock needle, and as she drank from the water, it goes down and she drinks it. So she swallows the needle. Now, Raven is still as the needle inside the girl's belly. And in her belly, she took on the form of a human baby. So he grows and he grows in her belly, mind you, he grows and he grows. And in time, the girl gives birth to a child with really dark eyes, shiny black hair, and a big nose. And so her father, so the Sky's chief, he loves his grandson so much. He would play with him often. He would invite others and the elders even to come see the boy. And Raven started crawling very young and crawled around a lot. And the whole time he was crawling, he seemed to be playing, but all the time he was looking for the light and where the light was coming from. So finally, he found a box with colorful carvings on the top, and it glowed. He was holding the box and crying, and the grandfather realized that he wanted to open the box. So grandfather takes the lid off the box, and light pours into the room so that the whole room is illuminated now. And then inside the box was a shining ball blazing with light, which was the sun. So Raven rolled the ball around as if to play with it, and as he was playing with it, it changed him back into his bird form. So, holding the light in his beak, he flew outside with the sun in his beak into the dark world. And as he flew across the lakes and over mountains, the world became illuminated. So, Raven flew as high as he could into the sky, and he threw the sun into the sky, and it stayed lodged in the sky, and hence the sun.
I love that.
It's a good one.
It's a good I love that.
Yeah.
And appropriately raven.
And appropriate. Yeah. Uh, okay, so let's talk about some medicinal stuff and then we'll go into magical stuff. So, astringent, circulatory stimulant, diuretic, expectorant, and general immune enhancer. So, I want to show you something very quick. So we're going to talk mostly about the Western hemlock. The Eastern hemlock is not used for medicinal purposes as much. It's mostly the Western hemlock.
Okay.
So, respiratory relief, we have infusions made from the twigs or like needles, are used to treat cough, congestion, colds, and bronchitis. Poultices of chewed leaves or of pitch, like the resin, are used on burns, wounds, skin infections, and a salve can be made to prevent sunburn, so natural, like sun repellent. Anti-inflammatory and pain management, so used for treating arthritis, muscle soreness, joint pain, good old York. Astringent and internal health. The inner bark is used for like astringent properties, used to treat diarrhea, hemorrhage. And the needles are really high in vitamin C, which gives us an interesting association with the sun. Because in my mind, vitamin C is like brightness, right? I know it's not from the sun, it's not vitamin D, but it's like very citrusy and sunny. So often brewed into an infusion for a nutrient boost, and externally, the infusions are used as a gargle for sore throats, gingivitis, or in bath for skin issues. So we have the Northwest people use the bark infusions for colds, coughs, fevers, excessive bleeding. And as I said before, the needles can be made into an infusion really high in vitamin C, which is like similar to a lot of other evergreen infusions. A lot of evergreens have their needles are relatively high in vitamin C. And
Be
then we have
careful about that.
cambium.
You got to think about that. Like getting vitamin C used to be a huge thing because we didn't always have like I mean the things that are high in vitamin C are like I can't imagine that you could like forage enough to feed a group of people
Yeah.
like strawberries or like what else is high in vitamin C? Like
Kiwi is really
um,
high, but that's like
bell
tropical.
peppers are high in vitamin
Mhm.
C, and
Yeah.
certainly in the Pacific Northwest there was an abundance of oranges and lemons. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly. So yeah, super good. And then so some indigenous groups like scraped off like the cambium, which remember is the inner bark. So you're like peeling the outer bark and then you scrape the inner bark. So as emergency food, they can dry it, or like dry it and powder it and incorporate it into bread, almost like a flour. And then medicinal extracts like bark was boiled to make extracts used for ailments, as we mentioned earlier. So, element is water and earth. I don't know how I feel about water for that, and I don't know if these like some of these a lot of the associations I found were for the poison hemlock plant. So I don't know how I feel about water, maybe because it's in the Pacific Northwest, I guess, but very earth, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. The confusion is confusing.
Yeah, it's like really annoying. It's super annoying. And so it's like mandrake and what apple? What's the
Mayapple.
Mayapple, I think. I don't know. Yeah, it's so confusing. Whatever. And so then season is late fall, deep winter, which I like. I like that. I don't know actually if I like winter, but I do like fall. I would also say summer though, because it's like associated with vitamin C, which in my mind just brings about like sunniness and also the story of the I think of summer. So I don't know. Planet is Saturn because of like slow growth, longevity associations with like dense, dark, shaded environments, which is true. And then astrological sign is Scorpio, like very intense, but also healing. I couldn't find anything about tarot or chakra.
Because of the confusion. It would just
Yeah,
get all like,
yeah. It's hard. I don't know. And I'm also so torn. Like, I do see it as associated with like the sun and nurturing. It's super nurturing. It's a lot of healing. And also, it being used as like a food source in case of emergencies also feels very nurturing to me, which is like very sunny.
maybe
But
empressy.
Yeah, Empressy probably. I don't know.
Yeah,
Chakra, I don't really know. I associate anything that's super healing with the root chakra just kind of automatically. But if we're going with sunny, we could also do like solar plexus. So,
yeah.
okay. So goddesses, we have now these are kind of like indirectly. So Lilith, we know that in some like interpretations, Lilith as being the demon figure, which she's not associated with all the time, but in the stories where she's a demon, associated with finding her home in the roots of a sacred tree, and sometimes that is interpreted as the hemlock tree. Hecate or Hecate, because of the tree plant mix-up, it's often associated with Hecate and like Circe, right, her daughters. Um, but again, and like negative associations, I love that. Negative associations in witchcraft, but that's more so like poison hemlock. So,
And
uh,
Cersei is more like sunny, so interesting.
yeah, I could see Circe with it.
Daughter.
Um, then we have Nemetona, I think, which is Celtic and Galeo-Roman. She is the goddess of Nemeton, which is called the sacred grove sometimes, but it's like anything associated with like forested natural spaces which have like a sacred association. So linked with protection, sanctuary provided by the trees, which makes sense. We talked about how that's like really shaded and known as She of the Sacred Grove. So it's not necessarily hemlock specific, but like groves of hemlock, which are pretty common up here. And then the female and crow symbolism that we saw in the Indigenous story. So it's associated with liminal spaces, shadow work, grief, and holding sorrow, protection without aggression. It's seen as a threshold tree found at forest edges, ravines, streams, symbolizes crossing points, which we've talked about before a couple times. And then the long witness, because the hemlock tree has a really long lifespan, it's considered like a long witness, seen as keeper of memory. So I don't know. I definitely agree with like these two, but is where again where it's coming back to like the shadow, which it's both. It may be polar, maybe the association is polar and polarity because of the shadowy darkness of like the protection within the group of hemlocks versus like the shadowy healing nature, like sunny, like, bright nature. So I don't know, maybe like a polarity type of plant or something.
Interesting.
Oh, I just wanted to give you that picture that I found. I always forget to list my sources, but I did put that pine cone picture in there. But yeah, so that's hemlock.
Nice.
Sit with a hemlock tree and see what associations come up, see what you're feeling like since there's so much mixed information on it. I'm gonna, now that I know what hemlocks look like and how to identify them, I'm gonna try to go find one.
Nice. That's awesome. I love it. And I love it's different, like learning about the hemlock tree. Like I
Right.
just didn't even know. So now I know. I really learned a lot. Thank you so much, Raven. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
And I hope you guys all loved it too. And we
A
will
pigeon flew away. Scared the shit out of me. I heard it.
we will see you at the next Ditch Witch Diary.